Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of Fight Chat Friday from TKD Coach Academy. This week we're looking at a tournament that's taken place recently in Spain, in Barcelona, and we have a lovely match for you that we're going to go through in a little bit of detail between YASSINE TALHAOUI and DOIEL DURAN. And excuse me lads if I'm pronouncing the names wrong, but honestly, fantastic match. It's going to be really enjoyable, so stay with us for this one.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Fight Chat Friday. So in this one, we're going to kind of have a look at it in terms of the modern style of ITF sparring and kind of what are the micro kind of games within the bigger game that are happening right now, and the styles and trends, excuse me, that are almost getting a better return, but also a little bit more popular right now. So that's kind of how we're going to frame this one and enjoy some great action from the two guys as well. Great match.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the first thing we have to say about the match and about that maybe some of the newer innovations in terms of how sparring is being done by the people who are being successful at the moment is it's bringing a certain intensity and a certain type of intensity. So there's always been intensity among successful competitors down the years, but intensity takes different forms. So as we kind of have a look at this, we might just talk about the different way that intensity is being expressed by these guys as we go.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that the intensity is a big thing because we see it a lot on the front leg now as well. But then people are using it to set traps, which we'll see later. But here you can see great work off the front leg and building that intensity. But it's very, very tricky to get the balance then between the intensity and good decision making, not going like gung-ho and making silly mistakes. So that's kind of a balance there you need to find.
Yeah, it's like it would be easier to just throw the shots that you do on the pads and just do like an explosive repeat session, but your opponent would have to cooperate with that. So it's that combination of being able to preserve pressure and momentum against your opponent while at the same time adapting to what you're seeing in front of you.
Yeah, and there's some nice changes here. If you looked at last week's clip on the side kicks, some great work here off the front leg from both guys, and I love their intent to get the hands as well and put some pressure. I think they actually use the front leg here to find that range with the hands. So you can see as they're landing, a lot of time they're pulling back, hoping or almost like expecting that there's going to be a punching exchange. But just for people that are watching as well, YASSINE is in red and DOIEL is in blue.
What I'm really quite interested in here is watching the patterns of the footwork. So we can see very regularly that both of the guys, but we're seeing a lot of from YASSINE here, shift in and pull the front foot only back. And, you know, what that does is it's putting a little bit of forward pressure on the opponent to move back off of the initial kind of shift. But then by pulling only the front foot, sometimes it makes it really easy to lift the front leg and go. But it also, and we see it in a later clip, sets up to pull the weight over the front leg and launch into a blitz. So yeah, quite quite good use of the footwork in the distance.
Yeah, I think the intensity as well, when we look at their movement, they're never just bouncing on the spot. So there's always forwards and back motion from both of them trying to almost set rhythms as well, which is like for most people, you won't notice this. And when you're in the ring, it's something that happens subconsciously almost. But they're never just bouncing on the same area. They're always working, always being proactive. And something that we had a chat before recording about as well is that for people who aren't used to this kind of style or this intensity, when it gets to the second round and like the nitty gritty of a high level match, then these guys who are used to this will be able to pull through most likely. So you need to be able to live in this intensity often for you to be able to be effective.
Yeah, definitely. And like as we start to see the kind of the expression of this building, we're getting some interesting exchanges where none of the exchanges really, as the match goes on, or very few of them are terminal. Like it's not, they're managing to preserve a little bit of momentum and, you know, interrupt the referee's ability to stop the match by getting to that exit on their own terms quite quickly.
Yeah, and exit. So we kind of use exit for two terms. Myself and Adrian, we use it for exiting the ring, but also exiting punching contact. So the guys do a great job of finding kicks. You see a lot of body kicks here. Great one from DOIEL. And then we see a couple of head kicks coming up as well soon. But yeah, absolutely. Like it's the game changer in terms of it's the difference, because usually when these guys go to hands, it's level pegging. You can't really see any clear scores, and then bang, bang. There's 2 kicks coming in there, and the referees on the corners are going to be seeing them quite clearly. And these are the big ones, that make that difference.
And before we even get into those, the difference makers, one of the things that we can see here is those decisions when you get into the contact. Who finishes with the kick and who's more effective in that has a huge impact in the way that this match goes out in the where the result goes in the end. But just looking at a few things before we get into those difference makers, you commented already, Richie, about their use of the backhand and using the backhand first to set up good contacts, and I think that was a really good pick because they do it really, really well, and you can see the follow-on shots it allows.
Yeah, in particular for most of this match, the guys are leading right leg versus left leg, which is even more important to lead with the backhand. But they do it really well, and I think like reading that rhythm that they have and the in and out motion and being able to pick that moment, because they both know they're quite sharp off the front leg. So being able to time that and come through, they actually both do it really, really well and just cut down that straight line, straight in and off the backhand, and enter in with a flurry of punches then. So usually people will enter off the front hand, but I really think just because of distance and just because of like the angles you can get with your feet, I think that leading with the backhand is a great idea, and I think that is something that we're seeing more of now in the more modern game, let's say.
Yeah, we're kind of biasing towards, look, if I'm going to go in, I want to see if I can finish with more than one punch. We're saying like that because it's all too easy when the guys have front legs like these guys do, that you'll concede a 2-pointer or a 3-pointer somewhere along the line. So the single punches don't have quite as much value.
Yeah, and another point as well, just before we get on to that, is I think that in the modern game, people are actually holding their leg up a little bit more in general, especially the lighter guys. So you see, like from the few clips we did see, there's like a couple of shots where their leg is in the air and they're carrying a lot. Yeah, it's not just those single ones. No, we do see the singles. Yeah, here's an example. So that means like once your leg is up and you're on top, unless you can kind of come around it or come under or whatever, it like there he tried to come under and it just wasn't there. And that's why it's even a better option than to go first with the backhand as well, because you don't want to be squeezed out and giving up space and things. So if you can cut them down early and just stop them as they lift their foot off the mat, it is a good option as well.
Yeah, we had this kind of parsed in our section, like setting traps. So because both guys have some similar strategies, they're giving their each other kind of the open invitations that they'd be looking for themselves. So it's kind of you can see on the way back at the start of this one, Doyle's he kicks in and then hoping to draw YASSINE into that backhand or to catch him with that defensive side kick, and in the end, because the trap doesn't quite work, he ends up giving up a bit of space, and YASSINE capitalizes to drive him into the corner. And we also see it a little bit here with the kind of the shortening steps that they both use. To allow them to cover the gap between them into their side kicks, or to allow them to counter the longer attacking side kicks by pulling back into the stance and being over the top of the leg then on the next initiation.
Yeah, that is something worth looking, because you can see their stances, sometimes they're a little bit longer, and then as they drop their feet from the front leg, they can get narrow sometimes.
Yeah.
So there's obviously 2 good reasons for that. You're able to move quicker because your balance is under you. But then as well, the only thing that you need to be aware of there is your space is going to be closer. So it's going to be harder for you to get back for example, a defensive side kick or something like that. So you just got to be aware of like getting the fine margin there. But I think the guys do it really well of just keeping the opponent guessing of that range that you have. Sometimes it's a bit longer, sometimes it's a bit closer. And then it just allows you to kind of dictate a little bit more with that front leg.
And I really like, as we watch this, and we'll see it as we go into the difference makers as well, that allowed one of the guys to come out on top throughout the match, was the ability to not fall into predictable rhythms. And overall, YASSINE, I think, does that slightly better job of it and ends up with some of these clearer scores. But it's setting and breaking rhythms, and both of them maintain that through almost all of the 4 minutes. But who did a slightly better job of keeping their rhythm less predictable, attacking on broken rhythm, and capitalizing on the small mistakes from their opponent. I think that made the big difference throughout the match.
Yeah, because that's what it comes back to at the end of the day. Who's the person getting the clearer, more visible scores? Because these guys in particular, they're very much back and forth in terms of their intensity. They're both like, look at these great clips here, great interactions, but it's hard to score them as a referee in terms of a clear, like, distinguish of who is this person that's ahead. So then you do need those very clear shots, and like the side kicks here, the backhands, clear ones, and then head shots off the punching exchanges, for example. You know, all these kicks here are vital for you to just have a clear distinguisher between you and the opponent.
Yeah, definitely. And we see from YASSINE here, like you have the backhand, not in the first part of it. We have the backhand here, quite clear. The back leg looks pretty good, and then they putting the fence up with the side kick as well. Then just to solidify his position once he gets to the end of it. So again, quite good. Now the back leg trying to kick to the head maybe doesn't score. That it looks like it hits the glove, but at the same time, you know, it's very possible the referee sees that and it goes in, you know.
Yeah, and like we covered last week, the advanced side kick tips, and we've seen the short versus the long side kick, and you notice here, like, obviously these are clipped, but the end of the match, YASSINE knows he's ahead and he starts to go much longer with his shots, where we see him at the beginning of the contest, he's a bit shorter and he's trying to get the contact and carry the contact, where now he's just trying to keep it long. Here we see a couple of these ones where he's using his front leg to maintain distance and just see the match out with those clear shots. And of course, when you're losing, you have to take a little bit of a risk there as well and almost go through some of them, and hopefully you get the timing right. So it just plays into your favor if you can do that well.
Yeah, and this is the one you tagged with Neil Ernest's favourite saying, being first in, last out. Where, you know, and that is if you can be the one that initiates and you can find the finishing kick or the exit shot, like, that's a huge one on the scoreboard, because even if the referees have the contact at a 1-1 or whatever, if you're the first one to contact and the last one to contact, you're going to come out winning that exchange.
For me, that big difference here as well. Like, I'm very impressed with YASSINE's ability to find that kick after hands, and like not just the same kick either, because we see a lot of people who just drill that same shot over and over again of that particular side to the particular body shot, usually a turning kick. But he's like pulling turning kicks to the left, to the right, body, head, the whole lot. So his ability to just find the correct shot is really impressive, and for me, a big difference maker there in getting the win.
Yeah, the decision making, exactly. And I think that was, you know, I have to say, hats off to both guys. Great fight to have. And, you know, obviously both of them looking like they'll bring some exciting stuff to the European Championships, hopefully in Croatia. But, you know, and that's something, again, to look forward to. So, like we said, let's link back to that statement that we made at the beginning, which, you know, is that this fight highlights some elements of a change in how ITF sparring is going the last year or two. Certainly as we're seeing a change post-COVID almost. You know, what does that amount to, and how do the guys show that?
Yeah, so I see like a lot of light front legs, light in terms of being able to pick them up pretty quick and to move them high, middle, just that. And then holding the legs a little higher and then mixing that with good intensity. We see a lot of intensity on the footwork. People are in and out, less kind of just bouncing on the position, having a look, waiting to see. A lot of work coming in off that backhand, in particular off the first entry. We're seeing lots of people finding the kicks as well with more kind of fancier shots nearly off the contact with hands. And for me, I think they're the kind of main things here. Now, if you think about it, like, these are things are always part of the game, but just
of course,
at the moment, they're the things that are kind of the main focus for a lot of people who are doing quite well.
Yeah, and I think when you're talking about that initial thing of that lighter front leg and carrying a little higher, it means that if you're going to counter it at all, you probably need to counter it at the lift, which means that backhand step in like becomes a much more important tool. Because if you let the leg give up or get up, then you have to give up a lot of space, and that, in the way the game is now, you don't want to be giving up that much space early on. You want to spoil the front leg or counter the front leg as it's coming up. So I think that kind of plays into it, and that kind of gives you no other choice but to have an intensity to the match, because you have to fight a little closer and be willing to react to the first thing you see if you're going to close down that front leg as it lifts. So then we get those very quick changes of rhythm and distance and so on, and looking for the opportunities to get that. And I think as well, because the referees are stopping short so much now and not letting contact develop, I think seeking that kick earlier after maybe 2 punches, or breaking and re-engaging after the 2 punches, I think is becoming a much more important strategy now, because you can't go 5-6 punches and push the person out on the back of that as easily, because the referee will probably step in before the exit happens anyway, and you're not getting the return. Whereas if you have the 2 punches and you look for the kick, there's a chance you'll get the return on the kick then. So I think that's
yeah. And like combination fighting, I think is a big focus now as well, but doing it correct.
Yeah.
You know, using those right moments, like you said. This referee did a fantastic job of letting this fight go, and we got a great match as a result. And
yeah,
I know he's a guy that's been at international championships, so high level referee, but did a great job. You know, when you don't notice the referee is there, then they do a fantastic job, and we got a great fight as a result.
Absolutely. So talking about what our members will be seeing in the show later today, do you want to give a kind of a brief discussion of what the question was?
Yeah, so we're going to look at the whole idea of drills and skills in terms of technique. So obviously we've seen great techniques on display here today, but we're going to look at the question of when is a good time to focus more on technical sparring training, and when's a good time to maybe work on the overall skills. We've seen like decision making and stuff on rhythm there, and good decisions on spacing. So obviously that's all stuff that's separate to technical. So we're going to just have a little bit of a chat about that, and give you some examples of maybe when we think is a good time to work on each, and how much time to focus on each one. So that's going to be what's coming up for the members section. Again, if you want to get involved there, check out the link in the description, or look for the join button on our channel.
Excellent. So that's us for today, and for everybody who's been watching, thank you for staying with us, and we'll see you next Friday.
See you in the next one.